Up, everybody? So this is episode 5 of the DEADASS NoCap podcast. What up? I'm your host, Jerome Strike Beats, in the house. Got the doobie that won't light. And today we are going to be talking about the 2015 classic, the NWA story, Straight Out of Compton. And now, before we get to that, a little bit of house cleaning. Just, visit the Patreon. We're going to have some exciting things every month. Just, www.patreon.com/DeadassNoCapPod. That's www.deadassnocap.com/ Did I get that wrong? Yeah, let's try that again. So www.patreon.com/deadassnocap.pod. It's going to be down there below on the little ticker. I will learn the website eventually. Just like this joint will, just fucking, disappear without me. So let's get it going. Hopefully this bitch will light. Now, before we get into this movie, I thought Real Motherfucking G's would be the best way to start this episode. As you can see, we got Tupac in the background behind me. We got the city of LA. We're repping the Dodgers because, Ohtani, but also because they, Dre's repping hella Dodger shit. He's definitely the opposite of Cube, who's like, buy Raider gear. Young O'Shea Jr., who plays his dad. But we'll get into all of that. First off, I just want to say I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, you filthy animals. I've been watching a lot of Christmas movies, but I'm a little over talking about all of them. So I decided to revisit a favorite. I've seen this movie countless times during a little bit of background here. I remember going to this movie in theaters with a date. I was, trying to impress her. Probably I took her to dinner. I was like, we're gonna go see this Straight Outta Compton movie. I know all about these guys. I've listened to all these songs. Even though I discovered Tupac when I was 22. I was way behind anyway. I remember vividly one day Kyle was like, "You never heard Tupac?" And I was like, "What? Who's Tupac? What is that? What's Tupac?" And he's like, "Tupac." So yeah, I learned all about that. Needless to say, I had a gangster rap phase where I would just consume Dr. Dre and Snoop D-O-double-G and Eminem. Then I saw Eminem live, and that was a life-changing experience. But then, we're not talking 8 Mile today. We are talking the NWA story, Straight Outta Compton. Now, it starts off like a completely different movie. Because, eazye, Eric Wright, he's on the streets, he's doing drugs, and he's dealing drugs. He's, high quantities. He's a pusher man of sorts. And so he goes into the crack house, and they're like, "Hey, man, chill out, have a 40. And he's like, I told you, I ain't thirsty. He gets all uppity, really lippity, he's really kind of, he's a businessman. You can kind of already tell he's got that business sense, easy about him. So he is basically caught in the middle of the 1980s crack epidemic of, when the LAPD had the fucking, the tanks, the Panzers going down the street of Compton, just ramming the battle rams. We've all seen that, in the OJ documentary and shit, how it got really bad and how they just kind of battle rammed these shanty apartments and then never cleaned them up, left people to suffer. Very, very kind of our government to do that to black people. So that's the opening scene. That's where this movie begins. So you kind of almost don't think you think it's more of going to be a training day instead of a fucking rap movie. But nevertheless, that is where our story begins. So in the second scene, and then we introduce Dre, and Dre is just like sleeping with his headphones in, listening to like Swing Down to Cherry Spot, or like the other one where he's like, like he's just listening to like classic records. Like you can kind of tell, like it's very subtle, but you can kind of, they really like, they do make it clear that Dre was never a gangster, and Dre was just kind of a bum who was like, his mom was like, you ain't gonna $50 ain't gonna pay you for your baby, and he's just like, he's a kid who lives at home with a baby mama and all that shit. So Dre's just kind of like, just listens to records, and like his brother looks up to him, but he's got really nothing going for him. I'll put this out later. You can smoke it later. But so that is where this movie, it gets even crazier. So basically, Dre just like, classic, like, I'm taking my records, Mom. I'm gonna go, like, where am I gonna go? I'm gonna go to Cube's house. Like, and Cube's just like, I rap poetry on the bus, and like, the bus, like, obviously like a guy like comes on the bus, is like, hey, blood, what's going on, blood? What's going on, cuz? And he's like, Floss poet, and like, so already Cube is just like, thinks he's the shit, and he's kind of like doing, like, he's trying to like talk about like what like life is around him, and like what he sees on the bus, and how like people like, come in with the Glock and all that shit, and just like fuck with shit. So Cube is like the writer, he's the poet, and Dre's got the like just like the fucking club beats. Like Dre's kind of like a unpolished version of himself, where he's just like, he's like very good at like the DJ shit, but he doesn't know how to like work a synthesizer or make a beat yet. He didn't make Forget About Dre yet. So, there wasn't really a Dre to forget about at that point. You know what I mean? So, so basically these guys, they start, writing records, and of course, eazye, being the business-minded, the savvy businessman that he is, eazye, he, has a meeting with Jerry Heller, who's like kind of in this like warehouse. Like he doesn't even really have an office. Of course, Jerry Heller, my favorite performance in the movie was Paul Giamatti. And I just watched The Holdovers, which is actually pretty good. Like that's, Giamatti has these he's an amazing actor, but like, you can't, it's hard. He's one of those actors where you only see him in Sideways, like, he's the guy from Sideways every time. Like, I'm not drinking any fucking Merlot, you fucking derelict. Like, what are you chewing, fucking gum? Like, he's just that guy, like, every time. So it's really hard for, you to see him as this character who's, like, he's just, like, an old, like, out-of-place white guy. But also, like, the real Jerry Heller was that, too. Like, if you look at, like, the NWA Behind the Music, they interviewed Jerry Heller, and he really is like a grandpa. Like, he's a Tommy Lasorda looking motherfucker. Like, he's very like white and out of place, like as the manager of these rap guys. And so basically eazye teams up with him, and he like, he tears down the wall or whatever of like what's keeping the boys, like, they're writing the NWA record. They, there's the one scene where eazye's like, they're like, they're doing the Boys on the Hood beat. They're like, and he's like, eazye's like, cruising down the street in my 6'4". Like, he can't get the line right, and he's just like, you're cruising. And then like, he's like, give me my lokes, and he like puts on his lokes, and he's like, cruising down the street on my 6. He finally gets on the beat, and then like so they make that hit record, and then like, and then they're all sitting in the studio one day, and like, they just like go out, like, they're eating like their Whataburger, whatever the fuck, like, their fat burger. And of course the cops roll up. It's always about like the cops, and like there's like the black cop, like the token black cop, the Uncle Tom, or the fucking like, and so like they pull up and they're like, what y'all just doing? Like hanging out, like fucking loitering motherfuckers. And they're like, and so like they make them go on the ground, of course, because they're just like, up to no good. They're not like writing music or anything in the room back there, like, because like nobody, people are like, rap, what the fuck is this? Like, this is not anything. So they basically, so they make him go on the ground, really fucked up, And then, of course, the best part of the scene of, good old fucking Giamatti comes out of nowhere and he's like, you can't come around and harass these guys because they're black. They have rights. That's harassment. It's like, he kind of he goes up to bat for him, which is great. But the scene, which is really sad, it's just annoying how Hollywood has to be all these black guys in a situation that's not good. Still the white guy has to save him, what I mean? And it's still the white guy's still the hero. He's still God, you can't do it because they're black. And it's it's the way he's talking about Merlot and Pinot and Sideways is the exact same way he's talking about race relations. He's I'm not drinking fucking Merlot. So Giamatti is just he starts to get in the mind of eazye, right? And so he's got eazye at the steak dinner, the fucking luncheon with the Cristal and shit, and eazye's living large, and they're on tour, and for some reason they're all eating Fatburger. They're still partying a lot, but and so Cube is just Jerry, I don't know when I'm gonna get paid for this shit. Man, we've been on tour, I've been writing all the songs, and Jerry's we're working on the contracts. We got the lawyers, and the lawyers, they're gonna bleed us dry. He just kind of Jerry Heller starts to be the sweet talking he starts to alienate eazye, of course, and he's just so he's just immediately after Cube leaves the table and drinks the Cristal, he's one day man, right? And immediately Giamatti's that guy wants to be you so bad. And he's just Cube wishes he was you. And he just kind of creates these weird rifts between the guys. And then, of course, Cube finally is just this is bullshit. I'm out. Because he's sign the contract and the money is yours. The $75,000. And he's I'm not signing until the other guys do. And he's haven't you heard they've already signed? I thought you're the last one. So, yeah, Giamatti is just playing the fucking long game. Meanwhile, NWA's popping off, but Cube left. Cube has gone on to bigger and better things, meaning a solo career where he starts to where they start to diss each other, and he does I would one now with Benedict. They NWA hits him with a Benedict Arnold thing, and he's no Vaseline, and then of course eazye and Dre beef, but they didn't talk about that one. That's my other main one of my main problems with this movie is that they didn't discuss the eazye Dre beef in the songs at all. Maybe they didn't get licensed to Real Motherfucking G's or it's on, but they basically. So once Cube leaves, Cube kind of starts to establish himself as his own artist. He does his own thing. He goes to Priority Records in New York, or when he does America's Most Wanted and shit. And so, of course, you go to, eazye's Wet and Wild party, which was a real party. There's footage of that. And, Dre's, there, and they're all just, fucking bitches and drinking Cristal and getting fucked up. And, of course, Jerry Heller's he's eazye, you gotta sign these checks right now. You're gonna be blown out of your mind later. You gotta sign these checks. And he hands eazye these checks during the party. So eazye's God, Jerry, do I gotta sign these right now? He's you're gonna be out of your mind later. He kind of just his banter with the Giamatti is the funniest part of the movie, because eazye kind of just goes along with it every time. And and of course, as soon as Cube starts, okay, yeah, so Dre is starting to get talked to here and there by Suge Knight of all the guys, which, side note, so when this movie dropped, Suge made headlines by manslaughter at a fast food joint where the fucking film was being made in Hollywood. This is a big story. Suge went to jail for this shit, and so this was free press for them, right? So Suge real life Suge's in jail. Meanwhile, in the movie, Suge, played by a guy who looks exactly like Suge Knight and also plays him in the Tupac one. He's just making a killing off impersonating Suge Knight and things. Bully for him, but pun intended. Anyway, so yeah, so they're at the Wet and Wild party, and he's it's like, it's all good that Dre be drowning all this pussy, but like, we gotta keep him around. He's our real talent. And he's like, don't you realize we have the DOC? We have a big roster. We have Michelet. We have the fucking Yo-Yo Twins. Like, Jerry Heller's trying to just be like, NWA is all good, but we're Ruthless Records. Like, you know, like, he always is like, I work for you, eazye. You don't work for me. And like, he just creates this whole thing where like, Jerry Heller is just like a fucking scumbag. And then like, of course, Cube, when he realizes they're dissing him or whatever, like he throws a diss back, and then all of a sudden, like Jerry Heller takes it super personally. He's like, that anti-Semitic piece of shit. like he's like, God, like, and eazye's like, bro, it's a street battle. What are you talking about? He probably doesn't even know what anti-Semitic is. Like, no, who knows what that shit is? Like, let us settle it. And he's like, fine, you call Dre and do that. And like there's this really tense like like Ren is like, damn me, who's the boss of who, you know, like they kind of like, he's like, fuck y'all, like, and like, so eazye, like, so it's all this ego shit that's like, and of course, you know, and Dre, meanwhile, Dre, like, you know, he loses his brother, but then like, he is meanwhile becoming good friends with like Suge. You know, you think like he and Suge are gonna be this like buddy team. And they are for a while. And like, of course, like Snoop like comes in on the studio. It's like, man, what's this, cuz? Like, and like they got the fucking like deep cover going on. Like, there's all the references to the songs are really good. Like, they did get that really good. But so there's like that, you know. So like, you know, it's like, oh, blood, like it's all good. Like, oh, let me get on this, man. Let me get on this. And all like the whole time Suge's like, I'll take care of your contracts, bro. And like, you know, of course, like Suge beats up eazye. That's how he's gonna take care of it. He beats eazye up. He like, you know, he vanilla ices him. So yeah, basically this movie, okay, the other part like that really bothered me about this movie is they're on tour and they're like so they're on tour and they're like playing like arenas at this point, and like, so, and meanwhile the FBI is like, you can't play Fuck the Police because that's a bad song. The message is clear, like, you know, and like they get like a government like letter about Fuck the Police. And so he's like, so of course Cube has a moment where he's like, he's like, they don't want us to play Fuck the Police, but we NWA. We do what we want to do. And so he like kind of like does this whole like build up where he's just like, you know, and the cops, like, meanwhile this like row of like the whitest like Nazi fucking looking cops are like just like hands crossed, just like, try us, just fucking sing that song and see what's gonna happen. And so like, of course, Straight Outta Compton, they like don't know, they play Fuck the Police, of course, like, fuck the police, you know, like they just like get into it, which is like, that fucking never happened. What are you talking about? Like, they didn't battle actual cops and shit like that. Like, I mean, like, there's some ridiculous, like, the imagery's so ridiculous where they're like, or yeah, because it's the cops before are like, whatever you do, you can't play that song. And they're like, if you guys play it, we're gonna be so pissed. And of course, like, so they go on stage and fucking do it. And like, it's just all contrived. Like, what the fuck? Like, this is not like, there's not like, you know, it's ridiculous. Like, this movie takes itself way too serious. Like, it's so funny. There's these moments too. It's really funny where like, you know, it's like Dre's just like, he's like depressed and he's got a good beat like on. He's got nothing but a G thing on, but it's like it's like not done yet. And he's like trying to come up with the lead, but he's like drinking the champagne. He's like, and he like finally gets it. And like, of course, like Snoop's like, hey bro, what's that? Let me go to first like a bust like a bubble. And he like immediately starts singing it. So you're just like, that also probably didn't fucking happen. Like, Snoop didn't fucking just, you know, like fucking like skip down the stairs and fucking like started fucking like singing like nothing but a G thing. And the Chronic was like happening. Like, I like movies are funny like that. They just like they just create this whole like, yeah, like it's like all mystical. That's how the Chronic was born. And like, you know, and so of course at the end, like everyone's kind of doing their own thing. Like Dre's like at death row, and death row is even stupid too. Like Suge like doesn't give a fuck. He's like, we got Pac working in the other room, and Suge be humiliating this guy in his underwear. Like, all this shit's crazy, you know. And like, so Dre's unhappy. He like, you know, he gets into a car accident, like, or whatever. Easy starts getting AIDS. Easy starts like dealing pot because he's like not making any money off of the records, which in reality, no, Easy was getting paid from Dre's records, so that was also wrong. And then, you know, of course, finally, like Easy and Jerry have a talk, and he's like, "What did that college bitch, that college level bitch, like get to you? Like, you're really smart, Eric. She's stupid." Like, and he's just like trying to like, he's like, "No, this is ruthless. We're ruthless records. This is like we did this together." Like, and Easy's like, "You fired Jerry." Like, he finally fires him, which is like, it's a satisfying moment. And so, like, you know, and by the end, it's like really like apparent that like they're all fragmented. Like, you know, Cube's like writing like Friday, and like the riots are happening. So it's like they create this whole like, you know, narrative where it's like, you know, they were really like conflicted by LA, and like NWA was gonna like get back together and all this shit. And so it's like, you know, so of course it's leading, but it's like, so yeah, all these meetings start to take place. So like, you know, Cube and Easy finally like hug it out, and like, you know, Easy finally calls Dre, and like, you know, so they all have like their moment. But it's really like, it's one of those things where like this movie is so ridiculous. Like none of it, like, I mean, it all like kind of happened, but it's also like all didn't really happen. And like, because like, I don't know, I'm obsessed with this shit. Like I used to like watch all the Arsenio's about like with Easy and shit. Like when he was performing Real Motherfucking G's, and he'd be like, he would just diss Dre on TV. He'd be like, "I don't know about you, man, but that Dre, man, he used to be wearing the pumps and the lipstick, and like he was in the videos all dancing." Like, no, that's Suge's thing, but like, you know, and he would just be like, "I don't know, man, I get paid off his records, man. Like, you know, he make a record, I get paid." And which is true. Like, so Easy was like basically getting rich off of Dre's like the Chronic. Like, he was making money off the Chronic, but like in the movie, he just like they sum that up with like, "Oh, he looks up at Sunset Boulevard and the Chronic, featuring Dr. Dre's on his photos on the billboard," and like, you know, Jimmy Iovine like saved it, which is also like semi true because I watched the Defiant ones. That's pretty accurate because, you know, Jimmy Iovine, he basically took his like talent of like, you know, scouting fucking, what's it called, like Rico Suave or whoever, Tom Petty, you know, like he would just like find these people. He would just be like, Jimmy Iovine had that thing like in the Defiant ones. It's so weird. Like he has that fucking like, "Well, Bruce Springsteen has this song that he doesn't like, Patti Smith. Why don't you sing it?" And then like, of course, like Stevie Nicks is like, "Hey, Tom Petty, can you write a song for me?" I'm like, he's like, "I want to write a song for me." And Stevie Nicks is like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." And so, you know, basically they're like, you know, Jimmy Iovine is the king at like forcing collaborations that like never need to happen. So of course, like Dr. Dre, like, you know, he gets this record and he's like, "Wait, who produced all this stuff?" And Dr. Dre's like, "Me, dumbass." And so like, so yeah, like Jimmy Iovine like has a little cameo, like, or like, you know, the Iovine lookalike, and he and Suge like take Dre aside and they're like, "We're gonna get you out of these contracts." And I mean, that's honestly probably what Jimmy Iovine did, because he would just like, in the Defiant ones too, like that's honestly the better source material for all this stuff. But he would like kind of sit on the phone like for hours and just like, he's like, you know, he'd like park up in the fucking like in the bathroom with like breakfast, like his wife would be bringing breakfast to the door, and he'd be like, "I'm calling everybody, like I'm fucking calling Marilyn Manson, I'm calling Dr. Dre, I'm calling like the managers, I'm gonna like," he's like, "You know, these guys want to say they're about these guys over here," like, you know, he would like negotiate, but he would kind of like do it where he would just kind of get everybody to like do what he wanted them the fuck to do. And so basically Jimmy Iovine probably did that with Eazy or with Jerry Heller or something, and Jerry Heller's like, "Fucking derelict, fucking like, are you fucking chewing gum?" Like, just Paul Giamatti's it up. He's like, "I'm such a fucking little." Giamatti is like funny, man. I gotta do more of his movies. Sideways is always a classic. It's just like, you know, And Thomas Hayden Church, like, oh boy, she's 2 tons of fun. Like, Thomas Hayden Church just doesn't give a fuck in that movie, man. I Sideways is way better than Straight Outta Compton. But that's the thing. My main takeaway from Straight Outta Compton is, I'm gonna wrap up in a couple minutes. www.patreon.com/deadassnocappod. That's www.com/deadassnocappod. And yeah, what this movie really teaches you is, the rappers versus police. Rappers are really like the main targets of police. And honestly, the only way, playing Jerry Heller, playing the Jewish guy, fucking derelict. Thanks, guys.